is TOS Television, your digital-first pan-African news network. I am Adesu Alsuyi, and this is Africa Now. Faustin Archange Touadera, Central African Republic's president, has been sworn in on Wednesday. He was re-elected for a second term on 27 December 2020. The swearing-in ceremony was attended by foreign dignitaries held at the National Assembly in Bangui, the country's capital. Meanwhile, Cameroon Prime Minister Joseph Dion Ngute said chaos in the Central African Republic has stalled development efforts and peace initiatives in Cameroon. Ngute said Cameroon President Paul Biya hopes that Touadera's leadership will bring back peace to the Central African Republic and, by extension, to Cameroon. He said both Cameroon and the Central African Republic can never have peace or develop if there is a crisis in any of the two states. He said the two countries are neighbors that must accept one another's citizens in case there is a crisis. Amadou Somoharo has been reappointed as the head of the National Assembly following the 6th of March legislative elections won by the ruling party. This was announced on Tuesday by members of Parliament Mamadou Douara, who chaired the ceremony. Somoharo's sister Seven, a former minister and founder member of President Ouattara's party, received 158 votes out of 247 voters, compared to 85 votes for the opposition candidate. The required majority was 128 votes. The ruling party, RHDP, won an absolute majority in the National Assembly with 134 seats out of 254 against 91 for the opposition parties. The Constitutional Council validated the results of the elections on 25 of March, except for 6 constituencies where voters will have to vote again. The legislative elections took place peacefully and with the participation of all major opposition parties, unlike the October 2020 presidential elections, which they boycotted and during which electoral violence resulted in around 100 deaths. Heavy gunfire was heard near Niger's presidency in the capital, Niamey, in the early hours of Wednesday, just 2 days before President-elect Mohamed Bazoum is due to be sworn into office. The gunfire started around 3 a.m. local time and lasted for about 30 minutes. The Presidential Guard is reported to have retaliated, preventing a group of soldiers from approaching the presidential palace. The U.S. Embassy in Niamey put out a security alert saying it would be closed on Wednesday due to gunshot heard near their neighborhood. All personnel are encouraged to stay home until further notice, it said. There have been growing attacks by armed groups and political tensions in the country following Bazoum's victory in February presidential election runoff. Former President Mohamed Ousmane, who lost in the runoff, had rejected the results, alleging fraud. South Sudan Governor Louis Lobong Lejore, who was in Camp 15 to calm down the high tension in the area following an attack on the center on Sunday, survived an attack by heavily armed youth from the Buya community on Monday evening that killed nearly 20 people in South Sudan Eastern Equatorial State, his press secretary said. The angry armed youth followed the governor and attacked the military barracks in Camp 15, bringing the death toll of the 2 incidents to nearly 20. After a 2-hour-long gun battle with the armed youth, the governor's protection unit and soldiers at Camp 15 barracks managed to push back the attackers, the press secretary said. The dead include one of the governor's bodyguards and a soldier's wife. 3 others were critically injured. It's alleged that Sunday's attack on Camp 15 was believed to be a revenge as a result of last week's deadly assault on the Sudan People's Liberation Army in opposition camp at Luwaring, where 5 soldiers, including their commander, were killed. The Somali army has killed at least 6 al-Shabaab militants on Tuesday in an operation in Mahas, a town in the central Somali region of Hiran, an official confirmed on Wednesday. Moamin Mohamed Halane, the governor of Mahas town, said the operation came after the forces received intelligence that al-Shabaab fighters were sneaking into the town, forcing the residents to pay compulsory tax. The latest incident came in sustained operation by the Somali army against al-Shabaab in the central and southern regions where the militants were still in control of the rural areas, conducting ambushes and carrying out roadside attacks. This is your digital first pan-African news network, TOS Television. You are watching Africa Now. More stories after the break. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. A United Nations report says French airstrike killed 19 civilians and 3 armed men at a wedding in Mali in January. The investigation happened after locals alleged that a helicopter had fired on people attending a wedding near Bonti village in central Mali. The investigation found that a wedding had taken place and there had been about 100 civilians at the site of the strike. About 5 armed people, thought to be members of the jihadist group affiliated to Al-Qaeda, also attended the celebrations. The report said the group affected by the strike was overwhelmingly composed of civilians who are protected persons under international humanitarian law, the United Nations report said. In a statement, France's defense minister disputed the finding, saying the January 3 strike targeted an armed terrorist group. It also said it had numerous reservations about the methodology used by the United Nations investigators. France has 5,100 troops across the Sahel region to fight militants tied to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group. Tens of thousands of Tigrayans have again been driven from their homes 4 months after the Ethiopian government declared victory over the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF. This time, it is due to regional forces and militiamen from neighboring Amhara seeking to settle a decade-old land dispute. According to witnesses, aid workers and members of Tigray's new administration, Amhara officials say the disputed lands, equal to about a quarter of Tigray, that were taken during the nearly 30 years that the TPLF-dominated central government before Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power in 2018. Tigrayan officials say the area has long been home to both Ethiopian or ethnic groups and that the region's borders are set by the constitution. Now that fighting has subsided, the roads have reopened. They say there is a concerted illegal push to drive out Tigrayans. Wednesday will see the International Criminal Court rule on whether to uphold the acquittal of Ivory Coast former President Laurent Gbagbo, the first head of state to stand trial at the tribunal. Gbagbo, who is 75 years old, and his former youth leader Charles Blé Guadé were cleared of crimes against humanity in 2019 after a wave of post-election violence in the West African nation more than a decade ago. The prosecution had appealed against the acquittal and wants a retrial over the bloodshed when more than 3,000 people were killed after Gbagbo disputed the result of the 2010 votes. Gbagbo refused to hand over power to Alassane Ouattara, the current president, but French troops eventually intervened and Ouattara's loyalists drove Gbagbo from his bunker. He was sent to the ICC in The Hague the following year. It was not yet confirmed whether Gbagbo and Blé Guadé would be in court for the ruling or attend via video link because of coronavirus restrictions. President Cyril Ramaphosa has paid tribute to legendary news anchor Noksolo Grootboom, who presented her last news bulletin on Tuesday evening after 37 years of working for the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Earlier, the presidency postponed the president's address to the nation on the COVID-19 Easter weekend restriction by half an hour to allow people to watch the final bulletin of the veteran journalist. Ordinarily, the president's speech gets priority over the rest of the television programming and is aired live. Ramaphosa says the news anchor was outstanding in a service to the nation.
I wish to pay tribute to Ms. Grootboom as an outstanding journalist who, throughout her 37 years of distinguished service, brought historic events in our country and across the world into the living rooms of our nation. We wish Ms. Grootboom well and thank her for her many years of service.
In business, Sub-Saharan Africa is expected to have an economic growth of 2.3% to 3.4% in 2021, bouncing back from a pandemic-induced 2.0 contraction in 2020, the World Bank said in a new report on Wednesday. For most countries in the region, activity will remain well below the pre-COVID-19 projections at the end of 2021, increasing the risk of long-lasting damage from the pandemic on people's living standards, the bank said. The recovery, which will also be aided by ongoing efforts to vaccinate people against the disease, is expected to vary among individual nations, the World Bank said. Diversified economies like Kenya and Ivory Coast, as well as mining-dependent ones like Botswana and Guinea, will grow robustly as rising confidence attracts investment, it said. Governments should support the projected economic recovery by strengthening their policy interventions, the World Bank said, adding that a new continental free trade bloc inaugurated at the start of this year could be key significant risk, however, still remain, the bank warned. This is your digital first Pan-African network, TOS Television. You're watching Africa Now. Up next is sports. Thank you for staying tuned. In sports, Cape Verde, Guinea-Bissau, Mauritania and Ethiopia have confirmed their participation in the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations AFCON finals in Cameroon following the final round of qualification matches on Tuesday. Guinea-Bissau qualified for their third successive finals thanks to a convincing 3-0 win over Congo in Bissau's 24 September Stadium. Meanwhile, Mauritania won 1-0 in the Central African Republic in Banjul in Group E. And a 0-0 draw between Madagascar and Nigeria meant that Ethiopia went through from Group K, despite having been 3-1 down to Ivory Coast when the match was abandoned in 80 minutes after referee Charles Bulu collapsed on the pitch. Regardless, Madagascar's failure to beat bottom-placed Nigeria means Ethiopia will attend their first African Nations Cup finals since 2013. Cape Verde grabbed the only Group F ticket available after their 1-0 victory over Mozambique. Benin refused to play their decisive qualifier in Sierra Leone after local authorities declared at least 5 of their players to be COVID-19 positive. One spot remains to be filled. Benin's players initially would not leave the team bus after being told the players who had tested positive were ineligible for the crucial Group L match in Freetown, where Sierra Leone needed to win, while Benin required only a draw for a place in next January's finals. Benin's federation called the situation a shame for African football and said it was a tense situation. Talks between Sierra Leone, Benin and Confederation of African Football (CAF) officials in Freetown failed to resolve the standoff as both squads remained in their hotels. And that is Africa Now. For more updates, do visit our website at www.tostvnetwork.com. Do also follow and like our social media handles on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And remember to subscribe on YouTube. Do stay with us and enjoy more programs on TOS Television Network. I am Adesuwa Osuyi. Thank you for watching.